a broadcasting icon with almost 30 years at WFAA in Dallas, Texas. I want to welcome John McCaa. How are you doing, sir?
Doing very well, thank you.
It's a pleasure to have you here this evening.
Oh, my pleasure.
Okay. I've heard that you've recently acquired a new award. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
The University of North Texas gave me a very nice award, their highest award actually, for journalism excellence. I really appreciate it. That's a magnificent school, by the way. A lot of folks don't realize that they have a school of journalism and a school of radio, television, film.
Correct.
But there's so much going on at that university that it's just amazing, but no, I'm very proud.
Where did it all start for John McCaa?
You know, my dad was in the military. I went to high school overseas, and when I was a senior in high school, we didn't have television where I lived in Spain. We didn't have television. Well, we had television, but Franco was in charge of television, so we didn't watch it. So okay. I didn't watch television 10th, 11th, and 12th grade. But we had a radio station that was run by the American military, and I was fascinated by radio. I was fascinated by radio documentaries, fascinated by Paul Harvey, fascinated by also old radio novels, believe it or not. I still collect old radio novels. But that kind of radio really interested me because you could use sound. You could take, for example, a story about a river and actually hear the river and make people think of the river. So that's where it started for me. I got an internship while I was in high school at that radio station. First I swept the floors and everything else, and then they let me have a show. And I came back to the United States to go to college, and having not seen television for 3 years, I became fascinated with it again. And the rest is history.
Family was in the military?
Yeah, my dad was in the Air Force.
Okay.
And we lived just outside Madrid. We lived there twice, as a matter of fact, 4th, 5th, and 6th grade, 10th, 11th, and 12th grade.
Okay. So where have you been?
As a kid?
Everywhere.
Oh, gee. I was born in Illinois. Let's see, Illinois, Idaho, Nebraska, Spain, Nebraska, Spain, Nebraska.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Definitely. So you did high school in Spain? I
did upper elementary school, so 4th, 5th, and 6th grade, then high school in Spain.
Okay. And did some interning in Spain or here on the U.S. side?
I did the internship at the radio station in Spain. When I came back and I was in college, when I was a junior, I was an intern at a television station. And I tell students all the time, get the internships. If you can get an internship, then that's how you figure out if that's really what you want to do.
Correct. I see. So when did you get your first start in the news business? When did it start?
November 15th, 1976. I graduated from college May 15th, 1976, so it took 6 months. And I worked at WOWT TV in Omaha, Nebraska. I worked there for 7.5 years. In those days, we called them reporter photographers because what we did was you went out with someone else, you shot their story, and they shot your story.
Okay.
And you edited them together. That was on film, on 16mm film. So it's changed quite a bit since then. What
did you do when your first job? You're a reporter?
I was a reporter. The position was reporter photographer. So in the back of my car, I carried a Canon Scupic camera, which didn't shoot audio. It was just a silent camera. But we would go in and get what we call the CP16, which was a film camera that actually shot sound as well. And we would take those with us, so you'd have to be good as a photographer and as a reporter as well. Okay. Then over time, I think I worked there 3.5 years, and I started anchoring the weekend. Well, you know what? Actually, I started substituting every now and then doing the farm report.
Okay.
Which was at 7:25 in the morning.
Wow.
And then I started doing the weekend news. I think it was May of 1980.
And this is in Nebraska,
in
correct?
Nebraska.
Okay.
And I worked there. I worked up to being the 6 o'clock anchor there, and then I came to work here.
What was it like when you first got to Dallas? Got to more of the big show?
Yeah, a whole different world. I mean, you do the same thing, but the pace is faster, number one. Number two, the larger staff. Number three, when I came here, if you didn't travel, if this was more of a regional television station, if you didn't travel to the really good stories in Oklahoma, in Arizona, Louisiana, then they were going to ask you, well, why don't you just go back to doing what you were doing before? So it was very different, but I liked it. I really liked it a lot.
Okay, what were some of the differences, small market, big market, when you first got to Dallas and you first started working for WFAA?
You know what, it's interesting because as a reporter, the interesting thing was I had to use a computer, and I had never used a computer before. It was electronic typewriters. As an anchor, I will never forget the first time I had to substitute anchor a newscast, and one of the production crew came around the corner to count me into a soundbite, and I had never seen that before. I had anchored for quite a bit. I'd never seen that before. You just had to kind of guess in your head where I was before that. But I will never forget looking, going, man, this is a breeze as long as they're going to do this. So, yeah, there were some differences, but not many.
What's one of the really famous or really big stories that you can recall when you started in Dallas? It was mid-'80s, correct?
Yeah, the first year I was here, there was a plane crash at DFW Airport. I think it was in November. I'd gotten here, and I started work June 1st or 4th of June of that year. There was a plane crash. That was just a huge story. There were also other stories over the years. I remember a little girl being trapped underground for several hours, and the whole country was watching as they tried to dig her out.
If I recall, that was outside of Dallas, wasn't that?
It was in Midland. It was in
Midland. Okay.
And Jessica McClure, I believe her.
I was a youngster, but I can remember that story actually.
Yeah, it was. Texas is a fascinating place because it's so large and so many things happen that this really is a place where, if you want to be a journalist, if you come here, sooner or later something's going to occur.
Some of the differences, if you can elaborate for me, the news business of old versus the news business of now.
The way they do the weather is not even close to the way they used to do the weather.
The question is, are they any better at it now than they were back then?
Well, you know, actually, it's interesting because
the
technology has definitely helped save some lives. I mean, I will say that. In Nebraska, where people die, if you're not keeping up with the weather, if you have no ability to tell people that a tornado is coming, somebody's going to die. And so people in the Midwest, they're definitely helped by the technology. No question about that. The other things that have changed would be, oh my goodness. When I started doing the weekend news in Omaha, and it was a CBS station, there was no CNN, there was no 24-hour news, and so when I did the Sunday night news, the only national video that I had came from the CBS Face the Nation show.
Okay.
Everything else you just had to kind of figure out how to get that video because you couldn't get satellite feeds, that sort of thing. Very different world. You know, now I can literally take an iPad.
Sure.
One of the new iPads, and talk to somebody who's on the other side of the planet.
What's one of the stories that you can remember that you covered personally that was very close to you, that was a very touching moment, or something big that happened that really had an impact on you as a newsman?
July 1st of the same year I got here, I lived on the far edge of Fort Worth off the Las Vegas Trail, and I had a new dog. He was a puppy.
Okay.
I was out walking him at 3 o'clock in the morning, and I noticed that over on the other side of the apartment complex, the sky was just bright as can be. I didn't know what was going on.
Sure.
And I could smell smoke. So I called a photographer, now this is 3 in the morning, who lived even closer to that smell. And I said, hey, I hate to wake you up, but man, I'm seeing something over there. And I can remember him screaming, you need to get over here right away. And I put the dog up, went over to his apartment, and the apartment complex next to him, which was being built, was up in flames. I mean, the whole thing. And we got there before the fire department.
Big fire.
Oh, yeah. We got there before the fire. We drove in, we started taking pictures, going, man, this is going to be a great story, terrific and everything. Not realizing that we're in the middle of the parking lot and the fire is going all around us. And so we could hear the firefighters come up, and this chief walks up and he looks at us, he says, you know you could die in about 5 or 10 minutes if you keep standing right here. So we had to back out. But that was the first major story like that I can remember doing.
Wow.
Since then, I had so many stories. I mean, there have been, I can't even begin to guess.
Right, so many stories. What keeps John McCaa motivated? What keeps you interested in the news business, in your work day to day?
Well, you know, the things that have always interested me have been stories about people, unusual people. I did this story with one of our photographers named Tim Almond years ago, and I think he told me about it. This woman who, she's very poor, but she delivers meals to Meals on Wheels, to people who are probably better off than she is, but she thinks it's something she should do. So we did this story on Thanksgiving Day, and it was a long story, probably 4 or 5 minutes long, which is unusual for television. But I'll never forget, she called me the next day crying, and I said, "What's wrong?" She said, "I've got all these people around my house shown up," and I said, "Well, what do they want?" They were giving her money, they rebuilt her house, they gave her a new car.
Really?
These are strangers. And the thing that's always amazed me about Texas is I've never, ever, ever seen us do a story where a truly needy person didn't get help by the audience. And I don't mean just kind of help. I mean dramatic changes in their life. So those are the kinds of stories that really motivate me. When you can find those kind of people, I think you're great. You're in great shape.
Recently in the news, there's been a lot of veteran news anchors, a lot of veterans that have passed away, some of the old timers, if you will.
Mike Wallace.
Correct.
Andy Rooney, I think.
Who would you say would be somebody that you looked up to, either past or present? Is there anyone who's either passed away or anyone currently that you've looked up to in the news business, in any part of the news business, somebody who had an effect on you, either inspirational or even a mentor, so to speak?
Yeah, I always thought that Charles Kuralt was the best. The best writer I saw on the network level. In terms of anchoring the news, I still admire Walter Cronkite, because I am a firm believer that any person who's smart enough to put food on the table for their kids and balance their own paychecks, and they don't need me telling them how to think. What they want to know is just general information. Nowadays, everybody wants to put an edge on things, and they want to be hip and everything else, and that's kind of nice, but in the end what you're doing to me is you're cutting off some of your credibility. So I admire Walter Cronkite. I admire, there was a guy, I'm from Omaha, there was a guy named Harold Dow who used to work for CBS, and Harold's passed away since then. Almost everybody who is in this business, particularly if they're a minority, they have something, they have to thank Harold for that, because he would critique our tapes, and I mean critique our tapes. It hurt, but it made us better.
Interesting.
So there are a lot of people like that. Strangely, a lot of people are surprised when I say this, but I really like Barbara Walters.
Barbara Walters, she's been around for a while. Yeah.
Not necessarily because of her, I like her because I think that she can take stories that are somewhat entertainment and make them serious, and make you see the serious side of them. She's pretty sharp about that.
When you're not at work and you're not working on the news yourself, what news programs do you watch? Do you watch CNN? Do you watch Nightline, 60 Minutes?
I get most of the news, believe it or not, now off the internet.
Correct.
And I say that simply because it just changes too quickly. There's websites like refdesk.com and news clusters and first headlines. Things change so much
so fast
that you just have to keep up with them that way. And then once you see that, then I will try to identify where the video is for those stories, YouTube and that sort of thing.
Coming up, I asked John about his passions outside of the news business. Did some of this influence come from living in Spain, living abroad?
Well, living in Spain has changed everything about me.
How living abroad has given him a new perspective on life in the U.S. Passions outside of the news business.
Oh, that's easy. Art and film. Art, film, and travel. My wife and I, we love to travel. I have collected art since I was in college, since I got out of college. My mother was an art collector. Been fascinated with film for years. Because we didn't have TV in Spain, went to a lot of movies. And
I was going to ask, did some of this influence come from living in Spain, living abroad?
Well, living in Spain has changed everything about me, and I think it changes everything about anybody, particularly in America. If an American has an opportunity to leave this country, watch it from a distance and come back, you will have a new appreciation of this country. So I am quickly offended by people who tell me, the country's all screwed up. I say, man, you don't know what screwed up is. You have no idea.
They haven't lived somewhere else.
Yeah.
Correct. Music?
Yeah, music.
Person? I've heard you're a big music person.
I'm in graduate school now, so I don't really have a chance to play my drum set, but I look forward to finishing a dissertation so that I can play my drum set again. I really look forward to that.
When did the drums start?
6th grade. My parents bought me a snare drum. The next year they brought me, in 7th grade, they bought me a drum set. $119.95. They bought it from Sears. And I learned to play them. I enjoyed it. It was loud. It was painful for them, but those drums kept me out of trouble when I was in junior and senior high school.
Wow. So. Favorite artist, favorite singer? I know you got to have a few.
Yeah, jazz, Miles Davis. I love Miles Davis. I really can't, you know, for rock influences and soul influences, there are so many that I really hate to name just one. I like Sting. I like Smokey Robinson. I like the group Weather Report with jazz. I like the group Yellow Jackets. So I mean, and then I love classical music too.
Classical music.
I mean, you can sit there and listen to Schubert or something like that, and it'll break me down in a minute.
Wow. And you said travel, but where's the place that you go? Do you have a favorite place that you go to, or always looking for a new adventure?
We go to this little small town in northern Italy called named Bellagio, and Bellagio is on Lake Como.
Okay.
You ever see the James Bond movie Casino Royale?
Yes.
There are 2 homes on Lake Como in that movie, where he's recovering after he's been beaten up quite severely. That home is that's Villa Balbionella, which is in the middle of the lake. And at the very end, he shoots this guy in the leg. That is Villa Gaeta, which is right across from where we rent this apartment for 2 or 3 weeks, and we just go over there and just relax. You know, steer clear of the big city. We may go to Venice. My wife loves Venice, and I love it too.
So all things Italian.
Yeah, anything. Oh yeah.
Anything Italian.
Italy.
Huh?
If you haven't been to Italy, you've got to go. Oh, it's a great place.
It's a great place. Food, art, fashion.
The food's great.
Cars.
You know, I have to confess, even though I love Italy, I'm still a Spanish art fan. Correct. I mean, El Greco, Velázquez, Goya. I love their